everybody, what's happening? I'm Ryan Yerdon, drummer for Puddle of Mudd, and we just wanted to talk to you a little bit today about Vater Sticks and being in a rock band. We just did a new record, and it came out in December 8th of 2009. Volume 4, Songs in the Key of Love and Hate. It's the first Puddle record that I've played on, so it's kind of cool for me. The process that happened recording the record was really an interesting kind of different process for me, because in the past, a lot of bands that I've played in have done a lot of pre-production and kind of prepared the songs and got them exactly where you want them, figured out the tempos, figured out the parts. And this was very much not like that. We went into the studio and had ideas and kind of arrangements that weren't completely together. And we kind of sussed it out right then and there. Figured out the arrangement, figured out the parts. Everybody kind of had a say in the drum parts and what's working and what's not working, which is a really great quality to have as an up-and-coming drummer, or a drummer that is, aspiring to be in a rock band. The quality is to be able to interpret what other people say, what kind of groove they hear, what kind of beat, because they don't necessarily read music, or they're not able to tell you they want, a push here or, a fast fill heel or whatever. They just kind of say it doesn't feel right, or it needs more of this, or less energy, or more energy. I guess just using broad terms. So it's really important to be able to interpret what everybody's trying to say and stay focused and stay enthusiastic about what you're doing and get the job done. So it was an interesting process. It happened very much in the studio, and we rocked it. You can check it out. It's called Volume 4, Songs in the Key of Love and Hate, Puddle of Mudd. I guess my relationship with Vater started I think it was in 93. I went to MI, and I remember being at the school, and Vater was super cool enough to give all the students a bunch of sticks. But that's when it started. We got a bunch of students got the sticks and started using them, and I remember it was just we just were all into rolling our sticks and making sure that they weren't wobbly. And it seemed like every time we rolled Vater, it was a joke of how consistent they were, because they would just roll perfectly. So I honestly have been using them ever since, and I've really never used any other stick. They really work for me. I'm a big fan. The Extreme 5B is what I've been using with Puddle. It's not too big. It's a little smaller than the 2B, and it just seems to really work well. And I also use the Vater Wrap, which I'm a huge fan of, because otherwise my hands would just be a disaster. They would just be torn apart every night after beating and beating. But yeah, I just have lots of love for Vater in general, and the stick quality, and the people there, and just the way that they conduct their business is good for me, and it really works. So I advise anybody out there to pick up a set of sticks, Vater sticks, and give them a shot. Check them out and see what you think. So I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about how I started playing drums and who my influences were and why and all that. I remember being maybe about 7 or 8 years old, and I went to one of my dad's shows. My dad still plays music to this day. And I went and watched him play a show at this auditorium in upstate New York, and I remember just having this really weird feeling that kind of occurred, and I didn't know what it was. And looking back on it, I guess what it was knowing that that's what I was going to be doing with my life, becoming a musician and playing music for a living. So basically that's when it all started, and then at that point I started paying more attention to him practicing in the garage next to our house and stuff, and would have questions for his drummers and everything. So there's a couple of his drummers that were super cool to me over the years and would teach me beats and fills and let me play after his rehearsals and everything. And then I started listening to probably the first band that I listened to a lot of like 50s and 60s doo-wop, because that's what he played. And I would kind of try to emulate those songs. And then I started to get into Led Zeppelin, was one of the first bands that I really got into. And then all through the 80s, like all the hair metal stuff from Tommy Lee to bands like Kingdom Come and bands like, who else were there? And then I went kind of backward and got into bands like Foreigner, and basically just all over the map. Todd Rundgren was a big influence when I was a kid. But I've always been a fan of music or bands, not necessarily drummers. Certain drummers stand out to me that I can relate to, that I feel like if I was in their position I would play parts similar to them. But then again, there's drummers like Stuart Copeland that I would never be able to come up with parts like that to a song, and when I sit down and learn them, I'm just amazed at how he does that. And I try to do that, and that's a great exercise for me. But so it's there's just been a plethora of, you know, drummers that have influenced me over my whole life. But you know, essentially it's just been guys that are doing less is more kind of drumming and just holding down a big beat. And then as time progressed, I started getting into I started programming drum machines and wanting to figure out how they did that and trying to emulate that and just play big solid beats. So yeah, I got into hip hop. I was really interested in, like, it was fascinating to me because everybody was just shaking their head whenever they listened to the music, and it was all beat oriented, obviously. So instead of going against the grain and putting a sticker that says drum machines have no soul on my car, I actually welcomed it and tried to emulate it and tried to get something out of it. And then I went to MI, and I started getting into all of these drummers all over the place, from really, like, in my opinion, really like fancy fusion drummers, like obviously Vinny Colaiuta and drummers like that, and Dave Weckl and Steve Gadd, and then Nirvana came out, and it was pretty much at that point that I started listening to Nirvana, and then started listening to punk music, and started to really get back into what I was thinking a couple of years before, which was not very popular at MI, to listen to Nirvana and Green Day and punk music, and the Ramones and the Sex Pistols and all that stuff. And so then that really became the focus. I was like, okay, I just want to be a drummer that holds the beat down, plays for the song, and doesn't really get fancy. If he gets fancy, then people have to force me to do it. So the influences then switched to Dave Grohl, big rock drumming, and then I read one time that Dave Grohl said, and actually I hung out with Josh Freese, and he said the same thing to me, to just start playing guitar. And then when I did that, I realized that I've been playing guitar for maybe 10 years on and off. I realized exactly what bands or guitar players or songwriters wanted to hear on their stuff, as opposed to what drummers did. So it became kind of a less selfish perspective, if you will. And that's been my influence up to now, is more of singers and songwriters and bands as opposed to drummers. I hope this helps you. I hope you can take something from this and turn it into something that can kind of open a new door for you. That's what I got. Ryan Yerdon, Puddle of Mudd, people. Thank you.